Lee?
Good evening.
Hello, David. Let's see, do we have Commissioner? I think we can get started, and hopefully he'll join within a few minutes. So, good evening, everyone, and I will bring the meeting of February 22, 2022 of the San Carlos Planning Commission to order. And we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, and if you would please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
And for the record, Commissioner Garvey is absent this evening. Mayor Iacopone.
Present.
And I don't see Don Bradley, so I'll mark him absent unless he happens to join in a little bit. Vice Chair Clements.
Present.
And Chair Root.
Present. And the next item on our agenda is the public comment. And this public comment section is limited to items that are not on the agenda, and the commission may briefly respond to statements made or questions posed as allowed by the Brown Act, Government Code Section 54954.2. However, the commission's general policy is to refer items to staff for attention or have a matter placed on a future commission agenda for more comprehensive action or report. So, Sarah, are there anyone in the waiting room for the public comment?
There are none at this time.
Okay, let's move on to the next agenda topic then, which is approval of minutes. And so we have minutes from January 12, 18, and February 7. Do we just handle them all as one group with a single motion to approve?
That would be fine with me, Chair.
Yeah, and you can do that if you like.
Okay. And so are there any comments on the minutes?
None by me on any of the three of them.
Okay. And I see Vice Chair Clements, you have a comment?
Chair, I just wanted to commend staff for the level of detail that is in the minutes. And I know it takes a lot of effort to get minutes looking this good. So I just wanted to acknowledge all the hard work and hours that went into these three sets of minutes. And with that, I would move approval of all three.
Okay.
And I could state the motion if we'd like. either way.
Is there a slide with the motion on it, or do we just go off of this one?
You can just.
I'm happy to go off.
Okay,
this one.
so I have a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second it.
Wonderful. We have a motion and a second. Can I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Iacopone,
Yes.
Vice Chair Clements,
Yes.
and Chair Rue.
Yes. They were good minutes.
Thank you. I'll make sure to pass that on. I take the credit, but I do look at them and read them before they go into the packet.
That's helpful, I'm sure, to have several passes. So the next item on our agenda is the public hearing. And the procedure for a public hearing, the staff will present a report on the history, physical features, etc., on the application, followed with the staff's recommendations. The applicant will make a presentation. Thereafter, interested members of the community may speak on the proposal. When all interested parties have had an opportunity to be heard, the hearing will be closed and no further discussion from the floor can be held. The commission will then consider the evidence and make its recommendation. If you challenge a public hearing item in court, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else raised at the public hearing described in this notice, the public notice, or in written correspondence delivered to the city at or prior to the public hearing. Speakers should state their name prior to addressing the commission. This will assist staff in preparing the minutes. Our item today is 611 Industrial Road, APN 046-090-370. Request for design review and mitigated negative declaration for a new electronic billboard. Staff presentation.
Thank you. Good evening, commissioners. Sanders, principal planner. I'll be writing the staff presentation. So San Carlos Municipal Code allows billboards on city property with design review from the Planning Commission and a lease agreement approved by the City Council. The project is located at the rear, is proposed to be located at the rear of 611 Industrial Road. That's adjacent to the US 101 southbound lanes. It's located within the heavy industrial zoning district and surrounded by commercial and industrial uses. The Residence Inn Hotel is located to the north and residential homes are located to the west. The proposed billboard is at a height of 55 feet above grade. The billboard itself would be a 48 by 14 foot display area. It's double-sided in a V shape, located 41 feet above grade to the underside of the display area. And then the pole is a decorative brushed aluminum pole cover with the City of Good Living logo on it. The site plan shows the proposed location of the site relative to the existing building in US Highway 101. The pole will be the only obstruction at the ground level, as the billboard itself is located 41 feet above grade. So as you can see, the pole is located rather close to the rear of the building, and the tenant will have access to the area beneath the billboard for continued equipment storage or parking. The applicant has submitted visual simulations that show the existing conditions. Next slide. Thank you. That show the existing conditions on the left and the proposed billboard on the right. And this view is 200 feet away from the billboard when traveling northbound on US Highway 101. This also proposed visual simulation with the billboard located behind the commercial building, approximately 600 feet east of Industrial Road. Visual simulation shows that the billboard will not be visible from Industrial Road and the adjacent residential neighborhood due to the blockage from the commercial buildings. The next slide shows the billboard as visible from the guest room at the Residence Inn Hotel, but not within direct line of sight. And this visual simulation is shown from a 4th floor guest room. The billboard has automatic display sensors for light levels to adjust at night and during darkened evening conditions. The billboard will be dark or completely shut off from midnight until 6 a.m. And the billboard is proposed to comply with the separation requirement of at least 1,000 feet from another electronic message center. The billboard is also consistent with the regulations contained in the San Carlos Municipal Code, as it complies with the height limit, with the area maximum oriented towards the freeway, and minimally visible from the residential neighborhood. An initial study mitigated negative declaration found no impacts from implementation of the proposed billboard that cannot be mitigated to a less than significant level. Mitigation measures relating to air quality during construction to minimize dust and exhaust, cultural resources, if any archaeological or paleontological resources are found, and hazardous materials if contaminated soil or groundwater are found. We did receive one comment prior to this meeting. I believe it's been distributed to the planning commissioners, and that was from the Belmont San Carlos Sierra Group. The commenter expressed concern with the lighted billboard near a riparian corridor and requests the billboard be turned off from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. and that a full EIR be prepared. The mitigated negative declaration did evaluate the billboard and the proximity to the sensitive biological habitat. And that's outlined in Biological Resources section 4.4, found on pages 41 and 42. And that shows that the site is located in an industrial area, an area that is already well lit at night, and the nearest sensitive biological habitats are not close to the site. They're well over 1,500 feet away across the freeway. So this is not what a CEQA consultant considers as near a sensitive habitat. And there's no trees or landscaping on the site. So the CEQA consultant found that the double-sided billboard will not create a large illuminated zone that could be attractive to night flying birds. Colors on the billboard would not be predominantly red or white, which attracts birds. And the sign would not be illuminated during the hours of 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. It would also not have transparent or reflective surfaces, which could lead to bird collisions. So based on that analysis, the project does not find that there would be a significant impact relating to biological resources. A notice of the mitigated negative declaration was mailed to property owners and occupants within 300 feet of the site on January 12th for the 30-day public review period. No comments have been received on the mitigated negative declaration during the comment period, although as I just mentioned, we did receive one just before this meeting. Public comments on the hearing were mailed to all property owners and occupants on February 8th and published in the newspaper on February 10th. And relating to that notice, we did receive one comment from the San Mateo County Electrical Training Center located just adjacent to the site at 625 Industrial Road. They expressed concern that the location of the billboard could impact tenant equipment storage at 611 Industrial and cause additional overflow parking on 625 Industrial. Staff conducted a site inspection and also spoke with the applicant, and it does not appear that the support column would impact the adjacent tenant. The applicant was able to confirm that the location of the support column would not displace parking, and we also have from the managing of the agent of the property that it would not impact the tenant. So here is the motion. Should you choose to approve the project, is both the negative declaration with the resolution and then the design review certificate for the billboard. And I'd be happy to try to answer any of your questions.
Are there clarifying questions from the commissioners before we open for public comment? And I see Vice Chair Clements would like to go first.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Lisa, for that very good presentation. It did address it.
I'm sorry. Do we have Don Bradley? I see a phone number on a participant.
Great.
Yeah. No, I'm on now. Can you hear me?
Great. Thank you. Sorry for that interruption.
Welcome. No, I'm glad that Commissioner Bradley's here. Welcome.
Thank you.
Your comments did address a couple of the questions that I had. Could you talk again a little bit more about the riparian corridor and the habitat that is across Highway 101, but to the east side? And you said for the purposes of CEQA that that 1,500 feet across the highway is far enough away that it was not judged to be a CEQA impact. Did I have that correct, or could you elaborate on that some more, please?
Yeah, so based on the analysis in the CEQA document, and I also followed up with our CEQA consultant this afternoon to discuss it a little further, and then they did indicate that the billboard, for a few reasons, is far enough away from that corridor. They do not see that as kind of a an area where the birds are migrating across the freeway. It's already an industrial built up area that is already lit at night. And it doesn't have habitat on it that also would attract the birds. So there's not a lot of trees adjacent to the billboard that would be an attractor for the birds or other, natural, like a creek or something else that would be a good habitat to attract the birds. So they also noted that the billboard does go dark at night. So it would be shut off between midnight and 6 a.m.
Great, thank you. And I had a second question, if the chair doesn't mind, which was just about the brightness of the billboard and, light pollution to the night skies. And if you could be a little bit more specific or go into this a little bit more, I would appreciate it. What the city's guidelines are for the limits of light, of ambient light, and also the directional aspects to that, and how this billboard proposal fits within that.
Sure. So the city doesn't have any specific requirements for the lighting of the billboards, but there are highway codes that are required to be complied with. So that has to do with the brightness, the foot candles, and how frequently the message rotates. So to make sure there's no flashing images. And I'd like to have the applicant expand on that during their response to the comments. But a couple of things, the billboard is kind of oriented in a V, so that is not oriented towards the residential neighborhood in the Western Hills, but it's more oriented, specifically towards the freeway. So it's specifically angled kind of away from that residential viewpoints. And then it does have a sensor. So if it's a dark kind of overcast day even, it would dim according to what that sensor perceives as the night of the sky brightness, and it would adjust accordingly. But I'd like to have the applicant expand as well during their comments.
Thank you very much.
Commissioner Iacoponi.
Thank you, Chair. Lisa, could you just remind us about the notion of the city leasing the property and then subleasing it on for the installation? Maybe we've done that before, but I just don't remember. So why do we do that?
Certainly. So our code does allow billboards on city-owned property only or city-controlled property only. So it does not currently allow billboards on private property. So in order to even consider a billboard, it needs to be on city-controlled property, either ownership or a lease agreement. And so in this case, it would be via a lease agreement. So the Orion would lease the property from the applicant, and the city would lease the property and then would lease it back to Orion for operation of the billboard. And then the city gets the revenue from the lease of that property. We have approved 4 in the past at 817 American, 1119 Industrial. The city property is 800 Branston, and then one that has not been built yet at 171 Industrial. So 3 of the 4 have been on leased property, 1 on owned property.
Very good. And I guess I'll can wait, but Chair Roof, I do have a follow-up.
And I can add that Adam Aronson, our Economic Development Manager, is also here this evening if you have any further questions. It may be more appropriate for him to respond to those.
Yeah, great, thank you. I guess I have a more general question because I know a number of us have approved several of these in past. We have 4, and I think you said we have 3 in. This would be the 5th approval. So in theory, we could have 5 within the 101 corridor. What's our upper limit? How many more of these could we be seeing by code?
Sure. So I can have maybe Adam respond to that one because I haven't analyzed. There does need to be that 1,000-foot separation, what other locations there could be. But I should also note there's one privately held billboard before this restriction went into place at 1 Circle Star Way. And that was the old billboard that was repurposed from when it was actually the Circle Star Theater. So there would be a total of 6 within the San Carlos corridor. And then Adam, if you could respond to how many more are of potential.
So I can't speak to the 1,000-foot distance with regards to how many that then max out at with the number of billboards in the city. We don't have a specific limit on the number of digital billboards, But I can say that, the council does feel that in their previous discussions that we're starting to reach the upper limit of what they feel is appropriate for the city. And I don't believe they would be open to very many beyond this.
Very good. I'll save follow-ups for when we have a commission discussion. Thank you.
And
Chairman Ruth,
yes, please, Commissioner Bradley.
yeah, excuse me for butting in like this, but I want to further Vice Chair Clement's comments on glare. And when someone mentioned the one, Lisa, I believe, mentioned one down on the north end of town where the Circle Star Theater was, and that sign got idolized or whatever you want to call it. And I haven't noticed for a while now because I don't get out after dark going that way much. But it was extremely bright and glaring and hazardous, as I believe this one will be because of the size of it and the height of it. It's size of a average size apartment, 700, what is it, 742 square feet. Think about that. And it's 55 feet in the air. So what I'm really worried about is for pilots wanting to land at San Carlos Airport, and we're putting up this giant post with a flag on the end of it and lit up, which is distracting to pilots as well as drivers and a safety hazard on the for the 101 freeway. Driving, we all know that signs are distracting. There's only two purposes that signs should have: informational and advertising. And we don't need the advertising. Is the city this poor? We have to keep getting these things that are derogatory to the city, I believe. And
well, let's save that part of the discussion for after the public comment.
Yeah,
If
good.
that's kind of a
Point.
deliberation point, an important one. So definitely bring it up. But about the airport, does the city staff have a response about impact to the airport operation?
Yeah, we haven't received any comments from the airport relating to this project or any of the other billboards that are operational. We have not received any concern or comments from them. Okay.
I had a question or two myself, and one of them is there any, this billboard is branded with the city of San Carlos name and has some responsibility for it. Is there any restrictions or oversight of the content that could be on it? Can there be political advertising or perhaps a controversial content that we may not want to associate with the city?
Adam, are you able? I believe there are. Yeah.
Yes, that's correct. So within the sublease agreement, there is language where if there's any signage or advertisements on the sign that is believed to be sensitive, it needs to be shared with the city first, and then the city has a chance to either approve or deny what that particular messaging is if it is believed to not reflect the city in a manner that we would wish it to. Okay, thank you. And how long is the city committed to maintaining the billboard? Is the lease, are we stuck with it for a certain amount of time once we sign off on the lease? So it's a 20-year lease with then a 10-year option, and that option is at the terms of the lessee. Mm-hmm. So essentially up to 30 years. Okay. It's an option for the leasee. So okay. That's correct. Mm-hmm. And that is the terms that is on the other billboards that have previously been approved in terms of time. Okay. The other LED billboards, do they also have the restriction of midnight to 6 a.m. dark? They do. I'm not sure about the Circle Star billboard since that one preceded the city's involvement with these, but the other billboards do have that same restriction.
Okay. Well, the Circle Star billboard, is that a San Carlos billboard or Redwood City?
It's within the city of San Carlos city limits, but it's
Okay.
privately held and maintained.
I see. Okay. Those are my questions. So we can take a second pass here. Commissioner Vice Chair Clements.
Thanks, Chair. I had a simple question. I had two questions. One is about the lease agreement, which I realize is not before us this evening, but I wanted just to ask Adam if the city has guidelines as to conditions or parameters under which that it would enter into lease agreements for billboards. How would the city decide if somebody came to us and said, hey, would you like to do this with us?
So historically, we don't have specific parameters on what the lease terms would be, but we wouldn't consider something that doesn't meet at the bare minimum what we've received from previous billboards. And we're at the point now where we have enough in the city that we're not really willing to consider it any unless they go beyond the previous terms that have been offered to the city.
Great. And can I ask a technical question then as maybe this is a Lisa question, as we're considering the environmental impacts of the action is around the EIR NEGDEC and the environmental analysis. Can we make a recommendation to the city council as well regarding the lease, or is the lease not agendized tonight, so we cannot do that?
The lease is not under your authority, but depending on what the comment is, I'm sure we could carry it forward.
Okay. Thanks. So we'll handle during comments then. That makes sense. And then one just logistics question. There's an airport land use committee, correct?
Yes.
But the ALEC doesn't have to sign off on billboards. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other clarifying questions before we move to the, well, are we going to have the applicant present?
The applicant is here this evening and would be happy to answer any questions.
Is that part of the public comment, or is that part of the presentation?
You could open the public comment period and have the applicant go first. Yes.
Okay. Okay. I don't see any other hands raised, so let's move to the public comment. If you would like to make a public.
Mine's up, but you can't see it.
That's right. So go ahead, Commissioner Bradley.
Sorry. I just one clarification. It seems to me the last one of these that we approved after a lot of controversy, we told the building owner that sign that he was going to put up. Now, it wasn't one of these big LED signs, 50 feet in the air either, but it was just built a sign attached to a one-story building, as this one is, but this other one didn't go up in the air. It was truly one story and not that much lighting. I remember, but I remember us telling him that the only thing he could put on the sign was the occupants of the building that he owned on the same property. And he didn't like that, but that's what we told him. And now this one is going to be put up in every 8 seconds it change and have anything except objectionable information on it. Did we change our policy, or is it just that the city owns, or rather leases, the property, and therefore it gets around that requirement, so the sign can do a lot of advertising, not just informational, which was the case of the prior one? I have some clarification on that, please.
Sure, so I can clarify. So I believe the billboard that Commissioner Bradley is referring to is located at 171 Industrial Road. There's a static billboard there now. the adjacent property owner and business owner had a advertising message that was also static attached to the supports of that billboard, so beneath it. When this Planning Commission and City Council approved the lease agreement for the new electronic billboard, it prohibited the ability to attach any other messages to that electronic billboard relating to the business. So then the property owner came back and had a separate sign that he wanted to propose adjacent to it. And the restriction was put on that separate sign that it could only advertise the adjacent business. And Commissioner Bradley is correct, the property owner was not pleased with that determination. That business has since turned over and is now being run by Lyft Collision Center. And so the advertisement that you see out there just simply says Lyft. And so it is in compliance with the city regulations as a separate sign advertising a business.
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, let's move to the public comment section. And if you would like to make a public comment on agenda item 6A or 611 Industrial Road, now is the time to speak. You may join the Zoom meeting at the link provided or call the phone number provided and enter the ID and virtually raise your hand. Or if you're on the phone, press *9 and then *6 to unmute. And we'll start off with the applicant. Welcome. Please introduce yourself.
I'm Charles Beck. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Orion Outdoor Media. I'm here to answer all your questions regarding the development, the construction, the lighting, of course, the pole placement, photo simulations, anything regarding the operations or construction of the sign. Our CEO is also on the line tonight. If you did have any of the contractual or monetary questions, he'd be happy to answer that as well. I would like to address the lighting comments to kind of, is there a possibility somebody could pull up page 169 of the, no? Okay, so on page 169 of the agenda packet, there is a photo simulation of the sign that's existing at Branston Road. And it's a photo simulation. I took at nighttime from industrial, and you can see there's clearly zero light spillover or shed. You can't even, in the photo simulation, you can't even tell the sign's on. And I'm standing 100 feet away from it. So the new technology on these signs, this sign is going to be an exact replica of the last two that were built in the city. They're going to look, we're using the same manufacturer, we're using the same pole cover manufacturer, same screen manufacturer. So it's going to look exactly like the one that's at Branston. It'll be a cookie cutter of that sign. Now the technology on the screens has got a little bit better, but as far as what we are constructing, it's going to be no different than any other sign that's already been approved by the city council, and it's already in a developed industrial zone, across from the airport. And the lighting complies with all state standards. And again, if you look at that photo simulation, I think it kind of speaks for itself. It's the spillover on these signs now is almost zero. They almost appear backlit, they're not projecting light per se. So, and they are oriented towards the freeway. I think there's another photo simulation that shows the orientation of the V. So where any visibility, even if you were standing right behind the sign, you couldn't see the faces because the way so if you're behind the sign, they're angled like this. So you don't see the faces, even if you're standing right up close to the sign. So I think, they're made to be projected towards the viewers on Highway 101 and not anybody else. So with that, if there's any other questions other than the lighting, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you for that. And I think that helps clarify the concern that was raised. And let's see if we have anyone else that would like to make a public comment. Sarah, is there anyone in the waiting room?
Yes, caller ending in 403, you are unmuted and you have 2 minutes to speak.
Hello, welcome. We don't hear you yet. You might have to push *6 if you're on the phone. Well, that's not working. So,
Hello.
oh, now we hear you.
Hello.
Hi, welcome.
Hello, this is Dr. Vittori. Did you hear me?
Now we hear you.
Oh, excellent. Anyway, I'm a resident of San Carlos for the past 50 years. We have been in the riparian area as well as the Nob Hill area in which thousands of birds fly over your proposed sign. The birds can, of course, see it. And during the migratory period, which is exactly the time when the hours are very short of sunlight, and then, of course, your sign will now be attracting and distracting these birds. So the Sierra Club is very concerned about the location of this sign, which will lead to bird strikes, confusion amongst the birds, and it's from the standpoint of birds, bats, insects, is a ecological disaster. And the Sierra Club and we personally are very opposed to it. We visit these sites on a daily basis, and currently, if you happen to go down there during the night hours and just before sunset, when your light's going to come on, you will see thousands of birds on the Nob Hill pond area and in the riparian area as well. So we're certainly opposed to this lighted sign from an environmental perspective, and we don't really see that an appropriate study has been undertaken to address that issue.
Thank you. Sarah, is there an additional caller?
There are no callers at this time.
Okay. I'm waiting my 10 or 15 seconds to see if anybody pops up before we close the public comment. Well, since there are no additional public comments, I would entertain a motion to close the public comment period.
So moved. I move that we close the public comment period on item 6A for 611 Industrial Road.
I'll second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Iacopone,
Yes.
Commissioner Bradley,
Yes.
Vice Chair Clements,
Yes.
and Chair Ruth.
Yes. Okay. Now we have an opportunity to discuss. Can we have the motion on the screen so we know the scope of what we're asked to approve? Thank you. And so before we start the discussion, I just point out that we're approving the proposed mitigated negative declaration. And so as was, I think, mentioned earlier, we're not weighing in on the contract terms here as a planning commission, but instead we're addressing the things that are listed in this motion. So to start the deliberations off, Vice Chair Clements, I see your hand is raised.
Thank you, Chair. I had another question for staff that just occurred to me. I apologize. I didn't think of it before. If you don't mind if I ask, this is a mitigated neg deck, and the caller suggested that this study was not sufficient, and I think the Sierra Club's comment was that a full EIR would be more appropriate for this project. But we also heard from staff that the CEQA analysis was already applied in the analysis that was done. And so I guess I wanted to ask staff if a more full study was done, would anything change about the analysis, or have the standards for the CEQA review already been accomplished, and that part really would not change much?
So thank you for the question. In order to determine what level of CEQA review is appropriate, the CEQA consultant goes through the initial study checklist first. And I know the Planning Commission has seen that before. And they go through and kind of review the project in relation to those different checklist items to see, is there any item that could have a potential for a significant impact without any mitigation measures? And that's kind of what triggers, right, where we get to then do an EIR and we need further analysis. So with this project, the consultant went through that checklist, took a look at where those biological resources are in relation to this project, the habitat on the site, and did not find that there was the need to do any additional analysis. In speaking with the CEQA consultant this afternoon, they've also noted that the Sierra Club has not presented substantial evidence that there would be an impact and that it should be analyzed. I know they provided some information about a separate project, but that is at a different location than this site. As you're very familiar with San Carlos, 611 Industrial has got the freeway, and then across from the freeway are other businesses. Hiller Aviation Museum, the 655 Skyway construction is going on right now for that new office and hangar development. And then beyond that is the airport. So this isn't even directly across from that Bear Island Preserve. That's much farther south. And so for all of those reasons, the consultant determined that a full EIR was not needed for the additional analysis.
That was very helpful, Lisa. Thank you very much. With that, Chair, I guess I would make the suggestion, well, my observations are that the rules that apply seem to have been followed. The height limit is present. It sounds like the billboard has, with the adjustment for darkness during the nighttime from 12 to 6, but then also the number of foot candles, following a standard for the industry and presumably for Highway 101. To me, it seems that the objective standards that have been set out have been met by the applicant. And I do appreciate all of the additional photos and simulations of what the lighting might look like and where the billboard would fall. So while it does project on, in one image that I wasn't too excited about, there are lots of other images that indicated that from the residential neighborhood that it wouldn't be seen. And for, from other vantage points of the hotel, it also would not be visible, nor would it be visible to the hotel guests, the residents in. So I'm left with thinking that the proper procedures for the objective criteria would be to recommend that we approve the mitigated neg deck. And, but I will comment that it does seem in the comment section, while the lease is not under discussion today, it does seem as if the city needs to develop a standard and a protocol or a policy around which it would consider additional billboards and the conditions under which that may not just address revenues, but in what conditions would the city enter into a lease agreement in order to make the findings that only billboards can only be done on city controlled land. I find that the willingness to enter into new leases in order to make that policy work was unexpected to me. I assumed it would only be applied to city already owned or already controlled land, just hearing about the standard. So I do think that that's something the city council needs to explore and put in place, because if objective standards are met, we need to have rules by which we consider projects like this. So, so those are my comments. Thank you, Chair.
Thank
Well,
you.
I would agree with her comments. I thought I earlier heard someone from staff say that this should be the last application for these, that we wouldn't have any more. Is that possible? I don't expect a commitment here now, but I think it's reasonable to consider that we have enough of them. They're a safety hazard for drivers and car accidents on a already busy road that's now got a toll road on it, as well as 10 lanes wide of pavement. I'm not so sure about the habitat and the birds. I don't want to confuse the birds. But if that's a problem, as well as the drainage, my big consideration is hard to measure. It's subjective, but it's aesthetics. I don't want to be known as the city of bad signs, that we have more signs than Belmont or even Redwood City. It's just, I serve on this planning commission because I want to keep, not that I'm anti-growth at all, no, far from that, but I want to keep our city pleasing for people to live here, and making more signs that are on lit up for 18 hours a day. That would mean some people would never see that sign off because they'd be in bed before and after. It's just very distasteful to me, and I'm sorry I don't go off often like this on projects, but this is one I feel strongly about, that it's a safety hazard and a very negative aesthetic approach. I will say that I think the developers of this have done good job with the other projects. Just the nature of it that bothers me, and the consultants that we had that did the did an excellent job too. I want to commend them, as well as our staff, Lisa and everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bradley. Next, Commissioner Iacoponi.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to just make 2 points. One is I want to echo and support the comments of both of my colleagues. And I distinctly remember one of the prior approvals for one of these that Commissioner Bradley and I had a good discussion and agreeing with each other that we were both feeling exactly as he said. The city really doesn't need more of these. And I think it was a great comment earlier. Do we actually really need the revenue? Is it that material? So I think point one is if we, because all of the requirements have been met, need to approve this because there isn't a basis to not approve it. Now, I don't know if that's true, but if that's the case, then I would like to have sentiment be clear to the city council that the planning commission does not want to support any more of these. And we actually don't want staff to be put in a position to have to negotiate leases for more of these and do all of this work to get to this point. And I think the second point is it's it's not clear whether there is basis to not approve the mitigated negative declaration, in that we went through the checklist, the areas that were questionable were addressed. The applicant was asked to go through a process with good faith. They have done so. And any of the concerns appear to have been addressed, other than this general point of aesthetics and do we want this in our city? So I guess it's really just saying, if I felt like there was a basis to vote no, I would. I don't actually see that there is. And if staff has a comment that says, well, on this basis, you could vote no, I'd like to know what that is.
Well, there may be some basis for that in terms of the impact on the environment, on the aesthetic environment. Can we see the, just to be thorough here, can we see what the terms are that we have to agree we're meeting to approve this?
Yeah, so we do have two separate actions. One is the adequacy of the mitigated negative declaration, so the environmental review, and then the second is the design review certificate, and those findings are outlined in the zoning code. So if the city attorney were here, he would point you in that direction, as to review the findings as listed in the staff report. And I don't know if Lisa's able to pull those up, but I can read them to you. The proposal is consistent with the general plan and the zoning code. The design of the proposal is appropriate to the city, the neighborhood, and the lot in which it is proposed. The design of the proposal is compatible with its environment with respect to use, forms, materials, colors, setback, location, height, design, or similar qualities. The proposed satisfies the rules stated in Chapter 18.22. The billboard is consistent with the California Outdoor Advertising Act and the Federal Highway Beautification Act. The billboard must be oriented primarily for viewing from the adjacent freeway. The billboard design and orientation takes into account visibility from surrounding residential neighborhoods. So some of those findings, right, are pretty specific. And I guess the most one that is a little more objective would be the design is compatible with its environment, is appropriate. The design is appropriate to the city and the neighborhood and the lot in which it's proposed. So findings 2 and 3. Or maybe a little more for the commission to weigh in on.
Thank you.
Lisa, I don't know if you have any other thoughts.
Would you like me to pull these up? I could stop share and kind of bring up the section of the code. But these findings that Lisa just read are found on packet pages 19, 20, and 21. So it starts at the bottom of packet page 19. But specifically, the findings 2 and 3 are found on packet page 20. And if it's helpful to the commission, I can certainly bring those up, but otherwise they're in the packet.
So I guess I'll follow on with Commissioner Iacopone's comments that I think there would be room for us to consider especially the appropriate to the city and the neighborhood as we get lots of billboards. The city starts to look like the Las Vegas Strip that may not be appropriate for our city or neighborhood. So it seems like there could be at some point we could get to the place where we would have a basis to, in my opinion, we'd have a basis to say that we're not. The proposal doesn't meet that standard. But I'm not sure that this, in my opinion, the billboard, the new ones not so terrible in that the lighting seems to be attenuated. The billboard that's near Circle Star Road seems onerous and especially bright, but the other billboards along 101 seem to be, which are newer, seem to be better. I wish somebody would perhaps measure that Circle Star billboard and see if it really meets the standards or not, but that's not what we're here to discuss tonight. But the other ones seem to be quite a bit less flashy and bright. So I'm trying to weigh, I don't view it as a positive thing, but I understand that the city council would like to install this, that it is a significant revenue generator. And so I'm kind of falling on the side of it. Doesn't quite reach the point where I would complain. I would vote no due to the environmental impact on the neighborhood point. It would be nice if we could attach a little note to the city council that it's just as general feedback that I agree with other commissioners who've stated this, that seems like we've definitely reached the limit. Oh, and I wanted to mention in the chat from the meeting, I think it's okay if I relay the chat message from Charles Beck, and it says, due to the state spacing requirements and zoning requirements, there are not really any more spots to put an additional sign in the future due to the regulations. So I guess they've probably have looked to see what opportunities there are, and this is the last opportunity according to them. So should we take another pass of comments before we consider the motion? I think so. It looks like Vice Chair Clements and then Commissioner Iacoponi. And Commissioner Bradley, you can just speak up since I don't see your hand in between.
I'll follow my colleagues.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I'm looking carefully at the basis for the findings. I do think that because it is located in what is already an industrial area and it's slated to continue to be the industrial area, and because it is opposite 3 business uses, as staff noted, Hiller Aviation, new office building, and the airport, that I would have a hard time. I would have a hard time not finding that the proposal is compatible with its environment and is appropriate to the lot in which it is proposed. I find that actually the base of it and the city's logo to be attractive. And I did actually find all of the simulations as to the height of the billboard not being visible from many different vantage points or onerous to be compelling. Also, the one on page 169 that the applicant pointed out, that billboard looks like it's off to me. And so if the technology is such that it is not the glaring, horrible sign that, for instance, IKEA has in East Palo Alto, which is just overwhelming to me. If it is a different technology and it is not actually even visible from, a few hundred feet away, and so if you're not at the right angle, to me, that is much less onerous and concerning than some other ones that already exist on the highway. So looking through this, is it appropriate to the neighborhood? It's not visible from the residential neighborhood. And is it appropriate for the city? Well, the city weighed in on the design guidelines and the logo usage. And, I don't find it unattractive as billboards go. I just don't love billboards. I also understand that they are quite lucrative. And as long as there is a lease termination and the lease itself, the city council decides is worth it, it's a different topic. So I'm having a hard time making findings that would allow us to do something different than approve. Thanks.
Commissioner Iacoponi.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Maybe just a follow up for staff, and maybe Aaron, you could weigh in. Compared to the previous approval that we had for a billboard such as this, is there any material difference in height, in square footage, in the V orientation? I don't think there is in the column, because I think that's also silver with San Carlos on it. So can you just share whether this is identical or largely identical, or is there a difference from the one previously approved?
This one should be exactly the same as the last one approved. I believe they're even using the same manufacturers. So it should look as almost an identical duplicate of the other signs that have recently been built.
Okay, and can you remind us when, like, was that 24 months ago, or when was that?
I believe the last one that was built about 3 years ago.
Okay. So I think, to the applicant's point, technology has moved on. And I think, my points earlier notwithstanding, I'm with Vice Chair Clements that, again, there is a standard, it's an objective standard. I don't have to say I'm happy about it for the citizens of the city from an aesthetic point of view, but it meets a standard that was good and hasn't changed, and therefore I find it difficult to find any reason to vote what my conscience says otherwise, or my design sense says otherwise. So that was my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Bradley.
Yes, just lastly, I'd like to say I cannot support this. Sure, I can make most of the findings that the staff has done, and the consultant, good jobs on both their part, and the developer too, but I just think enough is enough. I say that every time, and yet I guess I've been here now about 6 years and gone through several of these iterations on LED signboards for San Carlos, and I'm opposed to them because they're a safety hazard mainly. Not as much aesthetically, but the safety factor. They are distracting when you're driving, day or night, and changing every 8 seconds. I mean, are we that poor we have to prostitute ourselves to get projects like this? Why not? I think that if you went up 55 feet in the air, that most of the people staying in the Residence Inn of Marriott Hotel would be able to see this. I don't know if they said that or not, but you couldn't see it if you were on the ground floor or at the swimming pool of that hotel. But if you were in the second to third, fourth, fifth floor of it, you could. I'm quite sure. And but they're not driving; they're just looking out their window, looking at another ugly electrical sign. So I can't support this. Thank you.
Thank you. And I guess I'll take my turn here and agree with Commissioner Iacopone and Vice Chair Clements that I don't see that. I think the findings are met with regard to the compatible with its environment in the neighborhood, given the setting of it, even though I don't think it's particularly attractive to have it, but I don't think it conflicts with that. And I trust that the highway rules for billboards and the airport rules and stuff are all consistent with the erection of the sign. After all, this is not the first one of these along there, so there shouldn't be surprises as to their impact. And so I would say that I would vote yes for this, even though it's aesthetically not very pleasing to have.
That, Chair, I could make a motion if you'd like.
Okay, go ahead, please.
I move that the Planning Commission adopt the accompanying resolution for approval of the proposed mitigated negative declaration associated with the proposed installation of a new LED billboard at 611 Industrial Road, based on the findings and for the reasons incorporated in the prepared initial study / mitigated negative declaration and the staff report. I also move that the Planning Commission approve the design review associated with the proposed installation of a new LED billboard at 611 Industrial Road, based on the findings and for the reasons incorporated in the staff report and as conditioned in the design review certificate.
Thank you.
I would second the motion if we can vote them separately. There are two motions there. Could we separate them? I'd like to support Vice Chair Clements.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, I agree to bifurcate. Yes.
So we've got two motions on the table. Can I have a second, perhaps, for a second to the first motion? And then we can take a roll call, and then we can second the second motion. So I think I heard you, Commissioner Bradley, second the first motion. Can we have a roll call on the first motion, please?
Commissioner Iacopone,
Yes.
Commissioner Bradley,
No.
Vice Chair Clements,
Yes.
and Chair Root.
Yes. Thank you. We have a second motion has been made. I would entertain a second to that motion.
I will second.
Could we first consider earlier Vice Chair Clements fostered the idea of doing a more detailed EIR?
So are you suggesting that that we attach a condition,
motion,
or?
Yes, yes, a condition.
Point of order, would the full EIR not pertain instead to the first motion rather than the second?
Yeah, I'm afraid so.
Yeah.
I didn't think you'd notice. You're very sharp.
And so the design review, I believe I'm satisfied that the specifications meet the design rules. So I guess I don't see a place to put that in myself, Commissioner Bradley. So I guess we're left with the motion. If we have a second, then unless there's an additional comment before we have a second.
I believe Commissioner Iacopone seconded, and then we can discuss if that motion does have a.
Okay, I did not hear that. So we have a motion and a second. So thank you. Let's have a roll call on the second motion.
Chair Roof, I'm sorry, before a roll call, do you mind if I ask, does anyone else have anything to say about the design review before we vote?
Commissioner Iacopone or Bradley?
I support Chair's comments about the design.
I will just say this is one of those hard decisions for me, and I just had to go with my values mostly on it. But I I appreciate where everybody's coming from on this.
Okay. Well, we do have a motion and a second. So is there any discussion before we have the roll call? Let's have a roll call.
I'd just
please.
like us to attach to our motion, or to the motion that we forward to the city council, that we think this should be the last sign on 101.
Staff, is there a way to communicate that?
We do provide the minutes and we can capture the discussion. At this point, there could be, if you want to have consensus maybe from the commission expressing concern. I don't know if I heard from all commissioners that this is the last one, so I don't want to misstate anything. So if you just want to kind of have a straw vote or just say, do all commissioners agree that we want to forward the statement and then separately vote on the motion? Lisa Porras, unless you have other ideas.
And Lisa, I just wanted to clarify, this could be a statement that would be contained in the staff report that goes to council, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking would probably be the best way to reflect any sentiments from the commission to the council.
Okay, well, I would support a statement in the staff report that this be the last commercial type billboard. I mean, I understand buildings along the highway can have a sign designating the name of the business, and that's probably a different category. But for these big commercial buildings, I don't know what the terminology is there, but for this category, I support that this be the last one. So now we've got Commissioner Bradley and me.
I would
thumbs
agree.
up to that.
I support that as well.
I would also agree with that. And I would suggest, my earlier comments that the city council consider a framework that continues to effectuate that. And, the city council's framework could also address under what conditions leases would get re-entered into. The billboard is not going to be gone after 30 years. There just won't be a lease anymore for it. And so really the question is, what is the council's approach to, what they would like to see with billboards or lack thereof? So I encourage that to be part of the broader discussion for lease renewals or for business terms that would affect the operations of the billboard. Thanks.
That makes sense to me as well. It's a little broader statement than what Commissioner Bradley brought forward and I endorsed. So do we want to take?
And I concurred with as well. I think it's
Yeah.
additive, frankly.
Yeah, it's just an additional consideration to be included. I would support that. Any
I will
objections?
too.
Okay.
We probably should say consensus because one of our commissioners is Ellen's not on tonight, I don't think.
Yeah, we can clarify that at the in the staff report that based on the attendees at the hearing, there was consensus. Yes,
that would be perfect. Okay, thank you, Commissioner Bradley, for leading us in that direction to make that explicit to the city council. They've got to hear from the people of the city somehow. So we made it happen there. So we do have the motion and the second on the table. Are we ready for the roll call?
Yes.
Commissioner Iacopone?
Yes.
Commissioner Bradley?
Yes.
Vice Chair Clements?
Yes.
And Chair Roux?
Yes. Okay, the next item on the agenda is item 7, reports, correspondence, and general information. Starting with letter A, report on recent city council actions.
Yes, Chair Ruth, and for the benefit of anyone watching and for the commission here this evening, I went ahead and added my verbal report as a bullet under this item A. And that is to say that recently, this past Monday, almost a week ago, the City Council did agree to extend the urgency ordinance that was initially passed in January, applicable to SB 9 for those a maximum of 2 lots for a subdivided parcel in single family residential zoning areas. And this extension would last for a period of 10 months and 15 days. And the city will be embarking, or staff will be embarking on a process to work with the community to address some of the big policy questions related to SB 9. So more information on that will be coming, but just wanted to share with the commission that this the urgency ordinance was extended on February 14th.
And may I ask, do you know what forum this would next to be discussed in? Or would it be a study session or community? How will input on this be gathered?
Yeah, we can do a report to the commission at our next meeting to kind of provide an outline or provide a memo to the commission on the steps that we'll be taking to have that discussion with the community. But I believe one of the very first steps is to work with the community, and we are going to be looking at whether that would be a standalone meeting or perhaps a study session where we would use the Planning Commission as a platform for that. But I don't have all the specifics yet. We're still looking at that, and I have to meet with the key staff that is working on that. So I don't want to misspeak and right until I get that information. But that's certainly something we can bring back to the commission and share.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Are we ready to go to B, Planning Commission comments or reports? Any comments or reports from the Planning Commission? I see Vice Chair Clements.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to report out that I'm part of the planning collaborative for the cities in Santa Clara County working on the housing element. And I did want to note that at least some jurisdictions in the Bay Area, due to the implementation of AB 215, which requires an additional round of comment and public review for the draft housing element, the jurisdictions are finding it challenging to meet the state's deadline for submission of the housing element. And I guess I wanted to ask, I don't know if staff's allowed to comment during this section, but if any jurisdictions in San Mateo County are reporting the same difficulty.
I can share that at this time, I'm not aware of anyone having that particular issue in San Mateo County. I mean, it could very well be, but it's one thing that our consultants are very aware of, especially as they're going through the process, have already gone through the process in Southern California with some of their clients down in Southern California. So we'll probably be needing to kind of strategize through that process as well. But you are correct. There's an additional process where we need to get like an additional review of the housing element during the state's review process. So it makes it a little bit challenging to do that. But we are aware, and we're going to try and do our best to get through that. So
great. That's good to hear. I did want to just clarify that the additional review process adds a total of 70 days, or takes it away really, from the timeline up front. And so it is not insignificant. And I also wanted to report that in a conversation with senior state staff, that they also strongly recommend an additional review cycle after the first submission to them and before the final submission, which adds another 60 days of review of time to the timeline, which where I work did not anticipate that either, given how lengthy the first comment letters are being that the state is issuing for many jurisdictions. So I just wanted to report that out as well. it is not pretty out there trying to make these housing element deadlines. So that's my report.
Thank you. Any other planning commission comments or reports? Let's move on to
Happy
Steve.
Washington's birthday.
Oh, is that today?
Yes, it is. Yesterday was President's Day.
Yeah.
Today is Washington's birthday.
Okay. Used to be its own holiday until it got
I'm old
consolidated.
enough to remember that we got two holidays a year due to Lincoln and
That's right.
Washington.
That's right. Thank you for that report. Informal report. Any other comments or reports before we move on? Let's see if there's any correspondence.
Yes, through the chair, the correspondence that staff received today regarding the agenda item 6A, 611 industrial has been forwarded to the commission and will be part of the record.
Thank you. That's right. I did see those. Part D, planning staff comments, reports, and updates of current projects.
Yes, so I have a couple of things that I would like to share with the commission, and I'll follow up in an email so that the commission doesn't have to write all this down. But for our next regular scheduled meeting, which is on March 7th, we will have an item before the commission, and it has to do with a proposed amendment to a previously approved sign program for the Transit Village project. So this is the amendments are concerning the two commercial buildings that frame the historic depot at the Caltrain site around that station area. So there's some modifications being made to that sign program that are being requested. And so because we have a previously approved sign program for that area, that would need to come forward for the commission to review and consider. So that'll be on the March 7th agenda. And so far, that's the only item we have. It looks like that'll be a light agenda. But then on March 21st, our second meeting in the month of March, we have a pretty full agenda. So there's a lot of things happening on March 21st. We will have the Housing Element Annual Progress Report for the year 2021. So this is where we can share, how many building permits were issued for net new housing units in the city, and how close we are at meeting RENA from the 5th cycle, which is our 596 unit cycle that would go from the year 2015 to 2023. So we will be reporting on that. We also have a use permit request for 380 Industrial Road for a company called Auto Vino. And so this was an interesting business proposal where I guess we'll save the description for the meeting, but that will be at 380 Industrial. And then lastly, but not least, is the tree protection ordinance. That's on the queue to come to the commission on March 21st. So I will follow up in an email so you have all of these written down. But I just wanted to give you a heads up of what's coming up on the agenda for next month. And that's all I have for this evening.
Well, thank you very much. And we can adjourn our meeting.
Thank you all. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.